paying, you should know because they're well above us on the podcast.
No one cares about Boy Meets World except for the people that watch that shit. I didn't watch that stuff, so welcome back to another episode of I Can Do This All Day. I'm Dan, the part-time adventurer. That is Mark, the resident Jedi.
Hello there. Today we're going to talk about a movie that is near and dear to our hearts and that very much amplifies our feelings about what today, here on this Monday, where nobody's working, hopefully, is meant to signify and commemorate. That's work. Everybody's had a terrible job, and I bet most of your terrible jobs were in the food service industry. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about waiting.
Yes, this is the second annual Labor Day episode. So we're talking about Ryan Reynolds. We're talking about a bunch of people in this cast, but most importantly, it's just a big middle finger to work, right? I mean, that's pretty much what it is. And you and I have both been in the retail settings where we have worked holidays, and I am so glad I don't do that anymore. I feel bad for the people that do. But you know what? I've put in my time, so I'm perfectly fine having today off. There's a pretty good reason as to why we're reviewing this, because even though we were initially a Marvel, DC, Star Wars podcast theme, we have kind of strayed away from that, but we've always kept some of those movies where there are DC or Marvel or Star Wars characters in them. So obviously you've got Deadpool in as the lead role, Ryan Reynolds. You also have a few other people from the DC universe, Emmanuel Shrieky, who is Lana Lang in the Superman and Lois TV show. And who else am I forgetting? I think there's a few other people in there too.
I mean, I love that you called out Deadpool and gave no respect to Green Lantern. No respect.
Who?
Oh man. This cast is long and distinguished, and I think that most of Hollywood has been in a Marvel movie at this point, and these folks have been in so many different things, from voicing characters in multiple animated comic book things, to like you said, taking the lead and bringing back Hugh Jackman, which is right now my favorite thing about Ryan Reynolds.
We have someone who wrote for Spider-Man Homecoming, who is also in this movie, which we'll talk a little bit about later. But
JFD,
yeah, so
the
we've got
notorious JFD.
notorious. But just to go back to the Green Lantern thing, so we ruffled a lot of feathers when we had said we had never heard of Blue Beetle before. So I'm just going to keep that going. For the record, we do both read comics, but not as much DC, a little bit here and there. But hey, if you're going to gun after us just because we don't read DC comics, I guess I'm probably going to needle you. And like, I've never heard of the Green Lantern. Have you ever heard of the Green Lantern before?
No, I like the color yellow, so I don't read any comic books with green.
Yeah, I don't know. Never heard of it. He must be like a medieval times character or something like that if he is a name like Lantern, because why else would you have a lantern? I don't know.
So we're talking about pre-electricity.
Yeah, it must
sounds
be
like a boring comic.
Yeah, I don't know. Probably one of like the lamest superheroes. He's probably never been in anything big. So,
man,
but
just an also ran in the Justice League. Not that great of a super friend.
I'm sure that he's probably not in those. I would have heard of him, So
he was in one. He was in the Lego movie in the background, serving no purpose,
yeah.
which sounds like what his character always does, from what I gather.
Well, I think my bathroom break is done. I've shit on DC and Green Lantern for the time being, but let's go back to the main movie. So let's talk about the origin. Take us back about waiting. When was the first time you saw this movie?
We're taking it back to 2005. Back in the day when this came out, I for the life of me, I've been going back and forth about whether I saw it in a theater or I didn't. I'm pretty sure I did, because I was working useless retail jobs in 2005. Um, don't think I was still rocking the Hollywood vid. I think I was doing something else, but man, the retail was strong in 2005 with me. And yeah, this was a rallying cry movie for everybody that worked in a um a not so amazing job, like people that worked in non-corporate gigs. It was I mean, still an amazing movie for all, but something gets you deep when you've had these when you worked with the type of people that were featured in this film.
Yeah. And I think I know I have for sure. And have you ever worked in the restaurant industry?
I just can't. I just feel so viscerally about shitty customers, and when you're that disrespectful to somebody that as they say in this movie, when you fuck with the people who serve you your food, I can only imagine like the shenanigans.
Yeah. I did work in a restaurant. It was my very first job. The restaurant is no longer around. For those who are familiar with the Southwest Chicago suburbs, it was a place called Traverso's. I used to bus tables there. And I was the hardworking, dedicated, shy busboy. So uh, I'm sure there were like some parties with some of the other bussers and waitresses, and I knew some of them had some nice commingling and fraternizing. But yeah, I never really got into it. I just went there, did my work, got my tips, and then would go hang out with my friends or whatever. So um, I have really no crazy stories. I've got some funny anecdotes here and there, which I'll talk a little bit about later. But yeah, this is something where I first saw the movie. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I rented it. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe I saw it on cable and then I rented it to be able to watch it in its entirety. But yeah, that's where it was for me, and it definitely struck a chord with me, and it just resonated with what I was going through at the time because I had just graduated college and I was working with a bunch of nice people, but just not the professional setting and professional acting colleagues that you think you would work with in your first time or first job out of college. So all good and fun. I know some people might actually listen to this, so it's all good, but it's been a while since we've seen this movie. When was the last time you saw it?
Been a minute. It's been a minute. It did its rounds on Netflix a few years ago, so I'd probably watched it, but it was definitely pre-pandemic. I mean, I have it on DVD somewhere too. Like I really did enjoy this movie when it was out. And I mean, it did well from a theater perspective, right? Like this movie only had a $3 million budget because everybody in it was like an emerging star. Like they had not like blossomed yet. Like don't get me wrong, like Ryan Reynolds and Anna Faris had done well, but um yeah, this was awesome at the time, and I watched it a bunch, and it was more of a frequent movie like when I had those shit jobs, because it was that commiserating um that just commiserating emotional attachment. But yeah, it's been a minute. It has aged.
Okay. Well, I've got a question for you. Okay. So we are going to choose our own adventure on this podcast because there is a slight risk about how we talk about this film either way. We either alienate ourselves, alienate our fan base, or alienate potential listeners. And who the hell knows? We might even get canceled for even talking about this a certain way. So, do we talk about it how we just take the film as a whole? Or do we go all social justice warrior and talk about how wrong the film is and just harp on all the negative things about it?
I think that you have to look at film as a snapshot of a period in time. Um, so I mean, how social justice can you get about something like this?
It can certainly get that way. So maybe I'll just play devil's advocate on a lot of this and just I'll give a little bit of both. How about that?
I mean, you do what you got to do, my friend. Luckily, I'm not worried about losing listeners, because half of them are related to us, so we're good.
With the positive, and we actually did pick up another listener. So gave some positive feedback. So I'll definitely give him a shout out a little bit later on. But
Yay.
positives about this. We've got a
Another
star-studded
one. Something positive.
star-studded cast. Uh really, let's just go down this list of characters because there's so much to talk about the movie as a whole, but it all revolves around the characters, right? There's not really a plot. It's just an episode of Seinfeld that happens to take place inside of a restaurant and all of the shenanigans that happen at shenanigans, right? So
I mean, it's a day of growth. We could call it a day of growth and
there's no
change.
growth. Absolutely no growth in this.
I
No
would
growth.
say that there's acceptance of perspective, right? But you're
Yeah.
right. It is a day in the life, right? It's Mitch's first day. Old Mitchy Pants.
So
But yeah,
right
one
off,
of the things that aged for me about this movie in such a positive way, and I was kind of shocked in watching it because I remembered it. But man, you hit it dead on. That cast is insane.
so many people, so many people,
So many
and
people that have worked and continued working. Like you're talking about this movie like it's a career ender, not a career ender for anybody in this movie. They all like continue to work and continue to go on, except for Andy Milonakis, because I don't know where you are, bro.
well, Andy Milonakis is still around. He makes appearances on certain shows, but Ryan Reynolds as Monty. So the first red flag that someone should pick up, or at least makes you almost second guess, like, uh-oh, what am I in for if this is your first time watching the movie, is a statutory rape joke right off the bat. Like that is right off the bat in the movie in the first 2 minutes, right? So but Ryan Reynolds is Monty. He's kind of like the smart ass wisecracking guy that knows everything about the ins and outs of shenanigans, as he is the mentor, or the he's the guy that Mitch is shadowing for the day. And I mean, the smart ass quips that come out of this guy's mouth, it's so quick, it's so funny, it's so wrong in a lot of cases. What are your thoughts on him and the role, and kind of his progression throughout the movie, and what he says and what he does?
We've all worked with a Monty, right? We've all worked with a Monty who is just like past the point of giving a fuck. And they're just there to enjoy the people, the camaraderie, and get through the day.
I don't think I've ever worked with a Monty, just because there are people that don't give a fuck, but there's a degree of coolness to Monty, right? Like people like to be around him. There is a hostess that totally wants to hook up with him. And so there's like that level and that aura around him. I don't think I've ever really worked with anyone that has that type of aura, where they're like the rebel without a cause, or that rebel that just doesn't care about anything. But yeah, I think we have all probably aspired to be him to a certain degree, just because of this movie. It's like, yeah, you know what? Fuck the establishment. Just go ahead and be a smartass to people, which is good for some people's morale building, and then like completely toxic and poisonous to where it's like, oh, this guy thinks he's Ryan Reynolds and he's just a dickhead to everyone.
Yeah, I think that work is more fun when you've got more Monties because the work gets done, and they know how to solve problems. And I mean, he's trusted enough to train the new guy, which I thought was which in now watching this movie as somebody who has been put in a leadership position in multiple opportunities, right? Why would you have Monty train the guy when the person you're offering the assistant manager job to is working? Wouldn't that be the person you'd have onboarding? Like that makes no sense.
I never thought about that until you just said it right now, because I wasn't I wasn't going for the realistic aspect of this
But
movie.
it's one of the things that aged, and just like my adult brain was like, well, that's just an example of why that guy's a shitty manager.
I guess there's a lot of things that aged poorly in this that I didn't I didn't think of this. And because I've seen this movie a bunch of times, I don't know if I was as critical of the realistic aspect of stuff. And you're absolutely right, though. It is funny that like, yeah, you're gonna have Monty train him. Like, yeah, he definitely should have had Dean.
But it makes sense in the writing because Ryan Reynolds walks us through the entirety of the situation. And honestly, in the writing of it, the fact that they start with the game as like the first thing they're teaching him, I think it really kind of sets off what we're in for the rest of the movie. Like it warns you, like put your kids to bed. Don't watch this with a little child. Like there's going to be some balls in it.
Anna Faris as the next big name as Serena. I was actually surprised that her role isn't as large as I thought it should have been, considering the fact that she has done at that point like three different scary movies. And she was the lead in that. She was hilarious, she was funny, and really she's kind of forgettable in this. She's second build, but it's like, okay, well, that's weird that she doesn't really do a whole lot in this movie.
Yeah, I while Anna Faris has a very, prestigious career and she's in a lot of things, I also like find her forgettable. So I'm okay that she doesn't have a large part in it. She's a wonderful person and a successful working actor. I'm not mad that we see her in certain situations and basically to rib Monty. I feel like you casted somebody with the gravitas and experience and star power of an Anna Faris just to balance the fact that you brought Van Wilder into the house and basically let him be Van Wilder the waiter.
You also have Justin Long, who, if you think about it, could even be like the lead, right? Yes, you got Ryan Reynolds kind of going through the day and everything, but Justin Long is obviously the good guy. He's someone that you can empathize and kind of just relate to in terms of everyone has had their parents talk about Johnny so and so or whoever, right? That, oh, they're doing this well, and if you just applied yourself, like I think that I know it definitely hits home for me along with a lot of people. But did you feel for Justin Long's character Dean?
I think more than feeling for him, I empathized a little bit, right? Like, yeah, or is that the same thing? That's probably the same thing. I might be misusing the word empathy. Way to call me out, grammar Nazi. Um, but I think that Justin Long is just meant to be an everyman in this. And we go through this journey with him that's painful that we all go through. He's the John Favreau in Swingers in this movie, right? That person that we're supposed to be like, oh, don't do that. Oh, don't let them say that, right? He adds the cringe that we've all felt.
But there's confidence though. He plays the character with confidence. I never really feel sorry for him in that sense. Like I might feel frustrated as like, man, that sucks to get that table and have those guys talk to you that way. But I feel like he's still a cool, in quotes, cool guy that, he was a good student, and after high school, he just started waiting tables, and that's what he's been doing
Well,
since then.
until you felt the sting of having that associate's degree instead of a bachelor's, then you can empathize with the Justin Long until you've spent some time at junior college.
Did he?
That's
Was he actually there? Or did he just start waiting tables? I didn't even realize that
He
that
was
was
going
the.
to school. He's got an associate's.
Oh, okay.
That was the whole thing. And he saw the manager's associates on display. And I'm just like, oh my God. I don't even
The
know what that
manager,
is.
so Dave
Yeah.
Keckner of so many different movies and so many different roles, always plays the same guy, and I'm fine with it, 100% fine with it. But Dave Keckner is Dan, the cool guy manager that is just always flexing his muscle,
Oh,
anything that he can do to prove that he's an alpha male when he really is just a sad, lonely man.
the epitome of just shit job managers. Like, why'd you get promoted? Because I showed up every day for 8 years. Man, talk about a promotion of attrition. Like, which is why he put Monty in charge, and why all he did is threaten to fire people or threaten to give you his I get a discount to eat here.
Yeah. I could use my manager card. We could eat for free.
Yeah, I eat for free. It's perks.
I don't think he's that bad of a guy at certain parts, but then he's just like he flexes that manager title, threatens to fire people, like you said, and I just don't like that. And I never really liked people that would do that. And I'm speaking specifically about a job that I had before. And oddly enough, the person that I worked with that I thought was very similar to Dan is someone who would quote the movie. So that made it even worse. Like he did not have the self-awareness that, oh, I'm the Dan guy, even though I'll quote some of the lines making fun of him, but I'm that guy. Like it was the worst. He made me hate that movie.
Ooh, I hate that he ruined it for you, but I think that's, life imitating art in a way, because there's certain people that they just don't get it. They don't understand. They're the micromanagers. Look what I can do. I deserve this people that end up in these kind of leadership jobs. I get to be in charge. So they take the job to be in charge, not to get anything done, not to take care of people, right? Like there's a difference between a manager and a leader. And you hit it on your head, on the head, right? I'm here to flex my authority.
He absolutely did. He absolutely did until he didn't anymore. So, but yeah, back to Dave Koechner though. I mean, just such a good actor, right? Because he can comedically execute the same character in a multitude of movies, and I know I'll keep seeing it. Like that's something where even as was it Chip and Anchorman, uh, so good, but still the same Dave Koechner. As a matter of fact, when I saw him on Saturday Night Live, I didn't like him until I got it. I got who Dave Koechner was, and I was just like, oh, that's just what he's doing. And like I was looking for like an Adam Sandler, Chris Farley, Mike Myers type of guy, but he was part of that cast. I don't know if he was ever an official member of the cast, but he was like one of the guest players or whatever.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
still funny.
He's there for the background. He's in so many things that are so successful. Even his character in The Office
Yeah.
is great, right? But he always, he represents the middlingly successful narcissists well.
Borderline creep too. Borderline creep in this movie.
Borderline? No. On the standing up for the line, proud of the line.
So is Monty a creep? Is Monty more of a creep than Dan?
No. Monty is not more of a creep than Dan.
He technically did something. I don't know what the laws are, but I would assume that's something statutory-esque.
I mean, isn't there like a buffer zone there? I don't know. I've never tested it.
His buffer zone was his genes. That was his buffer zone.
I understand that, but I mean, what's worse, right? A 21-year-old hitting on a 17-year-old, or a 40-year-old hitting on a 17-year-old?
I don't know if we want to go down this route, because
we should ask Dane
physically.
Cook.
Monty physically did something with her, as a minor. So I don't know. I
think that Bill Clinton said it best. He did not have sexual relations with that woman. He respected her.
Technically not, but he definitely didn't do Bill Clinton's version of not having sexual relations.
No,
but
he decided, so I guess there's a plus he wanted to date her. Again, it was a night that changed a lot of visions.
I don't know. We might have to throw a poll out to the audience.
Every Monty meets that girl he wants to respect at some point. It just happens.
So Dave Keckner's character he's like the Chris Hansen Catch a Predator guy. Like he hasn't done anything yet, but it's really fucking creepy that he's trying to hit on this hostess and try to go to the after party with her.
100% that. And
So
he also is completely unaware that this is not okay and she's not into it.
but is she kind of just like ah,
I mean,
what's the
sometimes you
term?
got to use
What's
your ability to take advantage. You know who never got yelled at in this movie by that guy?
the underage hostess?
That's it.
So going from one level of inappropriateness to the back of the house, a level of appropriateness, we've got Luis Guzman as Radimus. I love that name, Radimus. Just
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a real name or if they just fucking made that up for
I mean,
the
people make up
movie.
real names all the time, bro.
Such a good name. And this guy's like a is he a nymphomaniac or is he just a guy?
I mean,
He just likes sex.
he's just a dude, I guess. I mean,
With a very attractive girlfriend,
and I
right? I
mean,
mean,
at that at some point you would assume would realize that, and no offense to Luis Guzman, that he's, you know, what's the word? Humble looking and just a cook at a line cook. Like at some point, like that young lady is getting she's getting pulled out of that situation.
that young lady is Jordan Ladd, Cheryl Ladd, the former swimsuit supermodel from the 70s. And also, was she one of Charlie's Angels? I can't remember if she
Think
was. I think
so.
she was. But Jordan Ladd, good genes, very attractive. But
I don't think she wore jeans once in this movie.
true, very true. But so I love their dynamic, just kind of going back and forth, and it's just it's a fun back and forth on everything, and the way that they wrote that character, the fact that they get Luis Guzman as the guy who just ends up the only guy that has sex in the movie, and it's just like, wait, did he write the movie? Did Luis Guzman write the movie, and that's why he was able to do that scene, or was it just the comedic genius of like, let's get a average or below average looking dude, and let's have him bag the attractive girl? It's so crazy, but uh, I like him as a character actor. He's hilarious in this movie. Just his delivery of how he's explaining the game. Oh, oh my god! I during work, I would always talk about the Batwing. And you got to pull the skin flat like paper. It's so hilarious. How many times have you ever referenced that at work? Come on, I know you have.
I mean, we've all talked about some kind of inappropriate thing with the type of reverence that this game is underheld with. And I think that that's another part that resonates, right? When you've worked in like regular, like baseline entry level non-career jobs, these people are there and they're bored as shit and they hate everything, so they need to do something to make them happy, and there is a Luis Guzman everywhere, right? We all know them from some job where you're like, how is that guy pulling? It's just, and it's yeah, how does he get away with, and why do they let him touch people's food?
Yeah, yeah. They don't run a clean ship at Shenanigans. And speaking of a clean ship, so you've got Kai McBride from plenty of movies and TV shows. One of my favorites was Gone in 60 Seconds, where he's in it, and he's like the wise old black man at Shenanigans, right? That's his character. And they write it to the T. Like there's no reason as to why he's there other than to give really smart advice to people.
I don't want to be, I don't want to be terse or inappropriate, but The character, while it can be seen as a token in the film, I have experienced that archetype at multiple jobs, and always, not always, but there's been somebody that has that sage like advice everywhere I've worked. Somebody that is older, that is there because they need to work, but don't give a shit about what it is they're doing. They're like, eh, but they care about the people, and they care about sharing the wisdom that they've built over the years. You and I have worked with a person like this who was amazing and had amazing anecdotes for people. And I can think back to my retail days, and I specifically remember someone who met this archetype and was amazing and very influential on my development in that thing, and was probably the most professional person there. Because yeah, it was great. But yeah, no, I mean, if you don't know somebody like this, you haven't done enough. Like you'll meet them. You will meet them.
And the fact that his name is Bishop, right? Like, so it's just another way to stamp and cement the fact that he's an authoritative figure. And it's the his interaction with everything, right? So you have the similar characters in other movies. You had Charles Dutton in Rudy. You had Mr. T in Not Another Teen Movie, right? It's just it makes sense that he is in this movie and he's that authoritative figure with the wise advice, but he has some fun with it, right? The very first line that you hear from him is some nice advice about taking everything in, and then just imagine yourself that you were born blind. And like, what, where does that come from? But there's obviously some insight to that, right? Because I think from a deeper perspective of it, Mitch should be going in blind about this whole situation so that way he can assess, is shenanigans the place for him? And I might be going too deep for that, but I think there is some validity there, because at the end of it, Mitch does find out exactly what shenanigans is all about, and he kind of makes up his mind about everyone.
Yeah, I mean, at the end, I think so. But I mean, the Bishop character just is touching everybody, and he either gets the positive and respectful things, or he gets the Naomi. Like,
Yeah,
shut the fuck up and wash some fucking dishes. And that's such a microcosm for that person that I know from every job I've worked. That's that sage-like person. They're either treated with respect and openness, or like shit. Love it. I loved that representation. And again, like, as we move forward to Mitch, talk about somebody who this role in this movie is a microcosm for his career in Hollywood.
crazy. I didn't
Learned the
realize.
ropes and ended up as the fucking, like, found the answer right at the end. Right? Just, I'll see you at work tomorrow, bitches. Um, and went from waiting to being a hugely successful writer, director, producer.
Yeah, there's a lot of movies that I really liked. He was involved in the writing along with directing. So I mentioned this before. Vacation, which is kind of the sequel to all the National Lampoon's Vacations, where it's his son kind of goes on the little vacation. He directed that. Mitch directed that. John Francis Daly, JFD, and he's done a lot of other things too. He was on Spider-Man Homecoming, so that's just a small taste of what he has done. But his character in this, I don't know. The first time I saw it, I didn't really even care or even notice that no one was letting him talk. It wasn't until the very end. It's like, oh yeah, they didn't let him say a single word this entire movie, because everyone else just shines so brightly, and they wanted to shine so brightly that they just kind of bypassed whatever his opinion was.
if there was somebody from this movie that we could have as a guest on the podcast, I feel like he, other than Ryan Reynolds, would be amazing. Just to hear all of the things and how you go from there to there. Because man, like, so good.
I don't know, man. I will lobby for Justin Long to be on the podcast just because his collaboration and acting bits with Kevin Smith and my favorite role is his and Zach and Miri make a porno. I
I'm
can't remember the dude's name, but is it Jonathan St. Randy or something like that? It's just like the best name for
it
a
was like
character.
Randy St. James or something, right?
It's like Saint Randy, I want to say, but it's so funny because the name, obviously, like there's no way in hell that there's a Saint Randy out there, but his voice inflection, how he talks like this, and so good, so good. Justin
I'm
Long,
gonna
come on the podcast, man. We love you.
I went through a very long period of like disliking a lot of Justin Long's stuff and just being kind
Ooh,
of like, eh, eh. Um, and then Tusk, and I think that Tusk solved my problem with Justin Long.
of all movies, right?
Oh, that's
The
such a
most.
great movie. I love Tusk.
I
It
still
is,
haven't finished it to this day.
oh, you go full walrus at the end.
There we go. Brandon St. Randy, Justin Long's character in
Yeah.
Zack and Mary Make a
Yeah.
Porno. The best name. The best. I will name my next dog Brandon St. Randy because that's
Yeah,
just
I'm
such
sure
a
that the
fun
wife
thing.
will be cool with that,
I'm
especially
sure
when you
she'll be
give it.
fine.
Yeah, no, you'd sit the kids down and let them watch that movie so they understand it.
It would be funny if it was a gay dog. That'd be hilarious if that was the case.
Um, yeah, no, Justin Long does a great job in this movie, I think, and it's one of his more like just connect withable roles, and he's been in so much, like just such a long and solid career.
So as we go through like I want to spend a lot of time on the cast list, but I feel like we spent quite a bit of time on the cast list. So let's kind of go through a little bit quicker. But you got Caitlin Doubleday as Amy, who is Dean, Justin Long's character's love interest. She's kind of the good girl, like the innocent one, if you will, that is in love with Dean, or at least very interested in him, and she's just the polite server that always gets screwed by the hostess. Um, Funny character. I liked her. But Calvin. So Robert Patrick Benedict is Calvin, the only one I believe to go on to the sequel. Still waiting, and afraid to pee. Have you ever had any instances where you were afraid to go in public?
I don't have a shy bathroom problem. So no, no. But I mean, I think that we've all been in when I say we all, I think that many men can um identify with just awkward urinal situations.
It's the eye contact in urinals, not in urinals, but well, that too, but in stalls. How many times have you been sitting in a stall and you peek out the little crack of the door and someone is just like looking at you directly in the mirror and you guys make eye contact for that split second and then you're just like you move out of the way.
Dude, they make something that you can like magnet over that shit. Now, I think Instagram tried to sell it to me, but yeah, no, not all stalls are created equal. There are some bathrooms that are just super awkward. But while the stall situation is annoying, I try and pick my sitting spaces in the most private areas I can. But the more annoying thing for me is chatty Cathy's at the urinal. When did this become okay? When did it become okay to just like, hi, how's it going? No, no, not okay. And if
Yeah,
you're at a row full of urinals and you're the only person there, somebody sidles up, like danger. Danger. Continuing down the cast list, right? Um, Calvin is the cringy one. Naomi is another one that I think like you find one at every one job. One somebody that's just like they have to be there, but they just hate the customers. Like if it wasn't for the customers, this would be a great job.
I totally worked with Naomi, and she was always so fucking angry with customers, so fucking angry with the coworkers or people that worked, whether it's in department, out of department. So funny. I think she's mellowed out over the years, as does everyone with age. Like we kind of just chill out. But yeah, I saw this movie and I was like, I think I know her. I think I know her.
She's one that while she's continued working, um, haven't seen her in much that I like fully like you don't recognize her from stuff, but another one that's just continually working. Continually working. She was a voice in Coco. But continually working. And then Vanessa, I don't know how to say her last name, but Natasha, the
Jailbait.
door girl, the jailbait. She was in a run of movies around this time. Like she
Mm.
did a bunch of stuff and she continues to work. Just continues to go. I don't think there was like I don't do you have anything memorable from this specific character other than she was really good at playing jailbait?
Watching this again for the podcast, I was thinking she might be the worst person in this entire employee roster. I think she might be the worst. Just because
do
the
explain.
fact, yeah. So just because of the fact that like she is knowingly trying to attract older men, and she's working it to her advantage, right? I don't think there's any secret to that. It's just she's working it to her advantage for both Dan and also Monty. And hey, do what you got to do, right? But at the same time, the age factor comes into play. So with the age factor, and she said something that kind of caught my ear this next or this last go around is that, are you afraid that you're gonna go to jail? Like I won't tell the cops. It's like, ugh, that's like what people say who are gonna obviously go tell the cops if things don't go their way. Like I felt a little bit like dirty and sorry for Monty. He's like, I think he's going to prison after this. I think that's just how it's gonna be. So I think there's like a parent in me that is just like, if I had a kid that did that, I would be so disappointed. And if I worked at a place where I'm the same age now and I witnessed that, I would be like, I wouldn't necessarily counsel the underage girl. I would be like, hey dude, you want to stay away from her. Just trust me. You don't want to get involved with that. So I think that's where the worst comes into play. Monty knowingly says things, right? But there's no proof as to if he's done anything yet. And in the movie, he doesn't do anything except for that little makeout session, which is might be illegal, right? It probably is illegal. Dan, yes, there's the whole To Catch a Predator vibe where he may act on something, but he doesn't, you know, he's never put in the situation. So I don't know. But I have a big problem with instigators that like to start fires and gaslight people.
Yeah. I mean, it's not illegal, it's immoral, but
You don't think
yeah,
it's illegal? It's gotta be. It's
I
gotta be.
I
If you
you
saw
know,
a
I'm not a
40-year-old
lawyer.
guy,
I'm not a lawyer. I'm not here to do that. Not here to
allegedly,
yeah,
allegedly could be
allegedly.
illegal.
Allegedly, I know for sure I'm not a lawyer. But moving down the cast list expeditiously as you requested, I think we could do Nick and T Dog together. Milanakis and T Dog, as we'll call them. How many jobs just have those dudes that show up, do the work that nobody wants to do, but do it poorly, and just continually just like pretend that they're kind of a big deal.
Yeah, a majority of the people I used to work with for my first job out of college.
Yeah,
I'm pretty
yeah,
sure that's
yeah,
like all
yeah.
of them. Every single one of
Normally,
them.
normally there's some piece of deadly heavy machinery that they operate that somehow doesn't injure them at
This is
some point,
true.
whether it's, and usually it like either mashes boxes or cuts things or is a forklift. Like these are the folks that to steal the name of a Stallone movie. These are the Expendables.
Are you an Andy Milonakis fan?
No, he annoyed the shit out of me back in the day,
Same,
but
same.
somebody got it. And I mean, there's the list of things that have annoyed me over the years is a big list. I fully accept that there's art I don't get, and that's okay. But no, not an Andy Milonakis fan. Don't, never got it. Never
Yeah,
was there.
when I saw his MTV TV show, I was like, why is this on? And I didn't get it. I didn't get
I
it.
mean, I liked Tom Green, so I can't like, I just don't know why it doesn't transfer for me because, Tom Green begat Andy Milonakis, the same way that Dave Chappelle begat Key and Peele. Same thing,
Fav-
essentially. But
sidetrack really quick. What's your favorite Tom Green sketch?
um I'm uh,
I think I know what you want to say. You just don't want to say it.
okay. Um I think all of Tom Green can be captured in Freddy Got Fingered, the Tom Green movie, essentially.
Sure.
Um Also his work in Road Trip, which is another amazing, should have been a back to school movie that we did maybe next year. Um if we, yeah, we'll make it there. We'll do it. But I think that Tom Green did a lot of interesting things, including Drew Barrymore. So much.
My favorite was the skit with not skit. This is just real life, but where he made the "Where's my dinner, bitch" statue and placed it in the front yard. So awesome. And then he also turned Dad's car into the Slutmobile. I don't know if you remember that from the TV show where he
Yeah.
is I think she's spread eagle on the hood, painted on the hood. It's just ridiculous. And I know that was something that was said multiple times in high school, in Spanish class specifically. For anyone who's listened to the previous podcast episode where I talked about my Spanish teacher, just insanity would happen in the class, and a lot of Tom Green references and quotes were always thrown around in Spanish.
Yeah. Speaking of comedians that you don't really hear from much anymore, Dane Cook is in this movie, and man, this was the spark that lit the Dane Cook fire that burned long and bright, and now he's still there.
I think he just recently came out with a special.
Yeah. Did you see it?
No, no.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wasn't a Dane Cook hater, but he was obviously very popular around the time that I was in college, which everyone loved,
Yeah.
right?
No,
Like
I mean,
everyone was
Vicious
like,
Circle.
"Oh
I
yeah,
think
yeah,
I think I had it basically word for word for a while.
yeah."
Like that, and still to this day, quote it. I think I dropped a you I did my best on
I
my
love
wife
that.
the other day, and it just
Ah.
breaks up a very serious conversation. I'm like, I did my best. I did my
Uh,
best. And it just works, right? And that whole, do you want to go do a B&E somewhere, like bacon and eggs? And
Sometimes you just need to cry. Sometimes like a
as you do
good
though, it's so that comedy special and Dane Cook in movies still has a nostalgic power for me. But I sidetrack, personal story. My wife and I both really enjoyed Vicious Circle back in the day, and the next comedy special after that, bought tickets fairly close at the United Center in Chicago, went to it. It was definitely just not as good. And I
Was
feel
that
like
the where he was doing the bit with the Civil War flute player
it was
or
the
no?
one where somebody like hung themselves with the Christmas lights.
I don't remember
It
it,
was
but
it
it's
was not, it was just like, oh, this is just sad now. I think it was after his dad died or something. Like
hmm.
he went from being a young and basically consequence free comedian, right? He went from his 20s to his 30s and life got real and he had to be an adult while his brother was stealing all of his money. So,
Yeah.
it's just
Not a funny story, but yeah, that's
not a
true.
funny
That's
story.
actually
Actually, a lot of not funny things in that period of Cookness. But I mean, he did get I mean, the guy had some really awesome movies. I mean, awesome being relative, but I enjoyed them. They were in the vein of the age I was at the point as far as their maturity and topic. So was
so
super. I was excited that Dane Cook was in this movie. I remember specifically being excited that he was in this movie and hugely disappointed that he didn't have some bigger part. I was so pissed that he got like 2 minutes in
he
this
had
movie.
some
And I'm
good
just like,
laughs though.
oh, the fact that they basically gave him the I'm fucking with your food scene to just lord over. But that was the last. That was it. It was just like, okay, we're done with you, Dane. You can go home now.
It just ends up souring the soup, if you will. But
Mm.
for the food aspects, he's part of the ringleader of that entire scene where he does the additions to the entree for the Karen, if you will. Have you ever witnessed someone fucking with someone's food? Or I know you said you haven't worked in the restaurant industry. Did you know any friends that would fuck with people's food?
No, no, and I don't want to know about it. Like, don't. I don't. Like that would just lead to excessive amounts of paranoia. I mean, if there's one way to keep me from eating fast food, like tell me about that stuff and it just won't happen. Like, I won't, I can't. It would just, it'd be in my brain and it would be terrible. It would, again, like that was one of my reasonings. Like, if I ever work in fast food, I'll never eat it. And then I don't even know what would happen. It would just be a sad life.
So I'd be remiss if I didn't say a few of the stories of when I used to bust tables at a now defunct restaurant called Traverso's. It was in Orland Park on Harlem in like 152nd in Orland. You all know where it's at. Any south suburbs people, yep, you know what it's at. But so as I was a busser, there was a couple two stories. Number one, um, we would as busboys we would scavenge food if people didn't want to take their food. Like we would just scavenge, right? And it was pizza, so technically like it's the cleanest of all foods. It's not like we're like eating people's spaghetti where their like mouths were on every single noodle, but you know, pieces of pizza, right? There was one time that as a busser, and I never really, we would just order our pizzas if we wanted something, have the waitress put it in, have them order pizza, we'd eat it, right? But there was one day I was explicitly like just I was so freaking hungry and crabby because I got off of track practice, went straight to work, hadn't really eaten anything all day long, really tired from practice. And this one woman got up to leave. She was gone for like 15 minutes. I bust the table and she hasn't even touched like three-quarters of her pizza. And she was gone for like a good solid like 15, 20 minutes. And what do? Well, fuck. I'm so hungry right now. I need to eat. She's gone. It's going to take another 45 minutes at least to order pizza. I just start boom, popping like, and they're like the small little party slices where it's just like, yep, little squares. And I'm about four pieces deep into it. The lady comes back and said, "What happened to all my food and my wine? It's gone. You guys cleaned my table off." And I'm just like, shh. Oh, we thought you left, so we boxed up your food. So it's like, yeah, well, that's fine. Can I just get the box of food and the check, and then I'm gonna leave. Like, oh, okay. And so the most embarrassed I'd ever felt. I was like, I ate already like 4 pieces of this pizza, and I basically just threw the rest of the box in there, and I gave it back to the lady. And I'm wondering if she ever went home. It's like, this box feels kind of light. Like it's I took a good chunk out of that pizza. So that's one embarrassing story.
You're
So
terrible.
hope I was a hungry high school kid that hadn't eaten all day. So
I
sue
mean, what
me.
are they going to do? Fire you?
Statute of limitations well passed, and yeah, place is no longer in business.
You're not working at my restaurant.
But the other, so this is the other, just like what T Dog and whatever his name was, Nick, um, did for, huffing the whipped cream cans. I didn't do anything like that, but we did have bomb ass cheesecake that I think like the owner's wife or mother made, like handmade. Traverso's cheesecake was freaking awesome because I don't really like cheesecake, but there was like a perfect blend of Cool Whip to make it nice and light. So I learned this trick from another busser who would basically palm one of the cheesecake pieces in the freezer or the fridge, and he would go make salad, and he would stuff it into a cup, and then he would just eat the cheesecake out of the cup while making salad for the restaurant. And so I did it one time, right? I did it one time because I saw him do it, and I get almost caught. And I am like, my mouth is completely filled. And I'm making like I quickly go back to making the salad because I'm like locked in the little cooler area. And the manager is just like, hey, we need 2 things of salad really fast. We got a big rush. I was like, and I was just like, mouth is stuffed. I'm pretty sure like cheesecake pieces flew out of my mouth as I was responding back to him. But yeah, that is the desperate times of a high school kid trying to make money for his first job and being really, really hungry, but also really like the cheesecake.
You glutton. So, is
It was
there
so
any
good, man.
cheesecake that has hit you like that cheesecake?
No, no,
Mm.
nothing like it. And I'm pretty sure that the owner's mom is long passed away, but maybe the recipe's out there somewhere.
We'll have to Google it. We'll have to Google it. We'll link it
Yeah,
below if we find it.
yeah, for sure. But yeah, I figured I'd just be a little bit greedy and talk about that, just because nostalgia is one of my go-tos, and hey, who doesn't like a slice of cheesecake stuffed into a glass cup, eating with a spoon in a freezer, making salad?
I
Who can
mean,
resist?
you know, you know, you haven't lived until you've taken a nap in a walk-in cooler.
So as we go down the list, we got Jordan Ladd, which we talked about, Radimus's girlfriend, and I don't even know what she was in the movie. Was she a hostess,
No,
bartender?
she was just his girlfriend.
That's it. Like she didn't
That's
work
it.
there.
Arm candy, baby.
Huh. Interesting.
I think I
Because
could be
I don't
wrong.
recall her doing any route or
No,
any
well, I mean,
responsibility
she
there.
did work, but it was one specific job repetitively.
It was, and that is fantastic. Uh, Lana Lang, Emmanuel Shrieky as Tyla, the sexy lesbian bartender.
You call her Alana Lang. I call her Sloane. She may have one of the top 4 or 5 most successful careers post waiting, and she was very basic in this movie.
She,
She,
I had a hard time recognizing her. Like I recognize the voice, but she looks so much different because I actually started. I never really watched Entourage, so I believe I caught her in Zohan, and then a few like made for TV Christmas movies, like Hallmark Christmas movies, and that's it. So
I mean, it's definitely like I said, she's one of the most successful, and she's so far down the cast list. This movie is amazing with cast, and I don't think you get this anymore. Like, I think we've talked about pretty much everybody that's huge in this movie, right? I mean,
I mean, we will get this because there are people that will be taking off that will just be like, oh yeah. I mean, look at like Hunger Games, like you could say like, oh my God, that's such a stacked list of actors on that. And it's just because they haven't exploded yet,
Would
like,
you
and
call
they have.
this, would you say that this cast is stronger or equal to Superbad?
Ooh, I would have to say that it is probably going to be like super bad would be stronger, right? Because you have an Oscar winner in that. You have a lot of comedy bit players in it, because it's all throughout the movie, right? It's not just limited to one setting. It goes all throughout that city, suburb, or wherever they're at. And there's so many people in it. And you have porn stars that are in it. You have comedians. You have sketch comedy troops in it. And there's just a lot of people. So I would probably say, I mean, I think I like Superbad better, but at the same time, like you've got this one is a crazy cast too. I don't know. What are your
I
thoughts?
would say it's at least comparable. Like to look at that cast then versus now,
Sure.
it's the same thing, and you can't, like, I can't think of a lot of other movies that are like that come around, like once in a generation.
True. True. And God, Superbad's such a great movie. And that's another movie that is, almost borderline like, can you make this today? Like, is this really the case? But I don't know. But that has a ton of people in it too. I think the more likable cast is going to be Waiting, right? You got a whole bunch of people that are more likable, but God, super bad. Such a good cast with Seth Rogen, Bill Hader, Emma Stone, and Jonah Hill are the two big acting chops in it. But I mean, you can't forget about Dave Franco. Dave Franco plays a small part, but
Yeah,
still funny. Yeah, just pretty
there's
solid cast
there's
in both.
there's a ton in that movie, but again, like, you didn't know who any of them were.
True.
You knew Seth Rogen from Freaks and Geeks. I mean, yeah, it's but I feel like this movie is the same. Like, oh, that's the guy from Waiting. Has been, Justin Long for until he was bigger there. I don't know. I'm trying to think of other movies that have met that standard since, like, other movies that are older that come to mind are like The Outsiders, where
Sure.
everybody in that movie is gigantic, but at the time, not so much. The
Yeah.
Sways was the biggest person in that movie. Um, Stand by Me, The Goonies.
Goonies. Yeah.
You don't get, and the Goonies, like, it took a while for some of the Goonies to blossom,
Right,
but
right. Some of them, like in the 2000s, is when it happened for
I
them. So,
some of them, like, in the last 3 years.
yeah.
Shout out to Short Round, my dude. But I mean, it is definitely one of those casts, and that's another reason I like this movie so much. It's one of those casts. It's like, these people all made a movie together. How did I not know? Because this movie is, I want to call it a sleeper. I want to call it a cult classic.
So let's kind of go into a little bit more before we get to that final question. So, the game, the have you ever played anything similar to that with friends, coworkers, anything like that?
I would say that there have been places I've worked that have had contests or ongoing conversations that in looking back on them should have gotten me or us fired in just so fast. Like,
Say no more, fam. I get it. I
yeah,
get it.
like, it's like, oh God, I gotta wait. We should have, none of us. And the thing about it is, as I look back on that, right, as you reflect on those times in your life, it wasn't just like one person, it's the whole store. You're not
Everyone.
firing everybody because it's
Yeah.
just the thing you do. Um, at that point in your life, when you're that immature, when you're just, like you don't go to work because you're like, "Ooh, I want to go to work." It's like, guess I'll go to this place.
Do you have a favorite gag in the movie?
I think that the just the way that everybody is so attached to the game is kind of heartwarming for me in a way, because it's just, yes, because it not only, it's definitely hugely inappropriate and kind of weird in a way, but it also shows just the connective tissue of the team there. And as much as the staff is disjointed and dysfunctional, there's a common bond at every level of this restaurant, right? Back of house, front of house, the whole thing, except for the manager who's too cool for school. But it just shows like that they at least like each other enough to continue to go back and forth and have that camaraderie. Who knew balls could lead to camaraderie?
There's nothing that creates a stronger bond than full frontal male nudity.
Then than the Batwing. Have you
What
worked somewhere that has had this game?
no, we just had someone that just liked to show themselves. That's pretty much it.
You had an exhibitionist.
Yeah. Yeah. He was he was something else, that's for sure. But do you have a favorite character, and also do you have a character that you hate the most?
I mean, favorite character has to be Monty, right? I mean, who doesn't love Ryan Reynolds and everything?
My favorite is Radimus. I love
Yeah,
that
it's a
character. He's just
borderline.
so funny. So
It's a
funny.
borderline. But as far as unlikable characters, um, it's it's a tie between the redneck no steak guy and the fucking Karen who gets to eat like pubes in her food.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I wasn't thinking of her, but I would for sure be like, oh, she's the worst. But I
Just
would
the
have to say,
worst.
uh, Andy Milonakis's character is
Yeah.
my most hated one, just because I don't like, I don't get him. I don't like his sense of humor in this movie. I don't know.
Or
Just
any other time. So don't be biased
yeah, you're right. I
on
don't.
Andy.
I've never really liked anything that he's had. So.
Yeah, you just
But I
don't like
do
people who are
respect
named
him now.
Andy.
I've listened to a few podcast episodes with him, and I have a newfound respect for him. And so yeah, respect to Andy Milonakis. Good for you for getting a TV show and having your 15 minutes of fame. And it's still, still kind of going out there. He's a rapper. He's a legitimate rapper.
I
And
mean, let's put it this way. I have trouble pronouncing 85% of the names in Hollywood. I can pronounce Andy Milonakis on par every time. It just shows that, you know, even those that have a different niche are visible.
So, have you ever been one of the patrons at Shenanigans, whether it's the Karen, the steak guy, anything like that?
Uh-uh. Absolutely not. Not because of this movie, but in support of the feel of this movie. I am the over tip, don't complain. Something's got to be pretty fucking bad. I don't even think I've ever sent food back, which I mean, not a surprise, shocking, but like I'll go to the drive-thru and they'll forget something. I'm like, eh. I went to T-Bell with my wife the other day, and I literally ordered like one or two things that I'm like, it's backup because they always forget something. It is what it is.
So you've never been like the underage person trying to be cool, like, like the table of underage girls that are smoking. Like you never went into a restaurant, whether it was like a Hooters or anything like that, or somewhere where there's like a very attractive waitress and you're trying to be all, you know,
Oh, you
cool
tried to
and
pick up
coy.
on Hooters girls?
I've All
That's
of my
like,
friends tried to
no,
do that.
man.
All of my
No,
friends tried to do that.
no. It's yeah. They're
Never.
they're
Yeah,
not
I
there.
find that hard to believe that you've never been in that scenario.
I
Whether
knew
not
somebody
necessarily you or
I
the
knew somebody
people that
that
you were
worked
with.
there and heard them complain about it. And have heard the likening to trying to pick up a girl at Hooters is like trying to pick up a stripper. Like they're not there to be your girlfriend. They don't like you. They
I
want
get that. I'm saying you've never been around someone, your table has never done that.
oh, I've been around people. I'm not
That's
that
what I'm
guy.
saying. Yeah, that's like
Yeah. Sorry. Sorry. I thought you were asking me if I was the pick up a Hooters girl guy. And my answer was no.
there's always some type of ridiculous shenanigans of people trying to do that. And I do remember as I got, I think, a little bit older in high school age, when there would be like I was a senior, there'd be like freshmen that were going there, or even like eighth graders where their dad just like dropped them off, like, oh, you guys can have dinner at Hooters. And these poor, poor kids, actually not even poor kids, the poor waitress, these kids were just acting like freaking animals and just
Yeah.
being so ridiculous, and not even trying to hide the fact that they were just trying to fawn over these girls. And it was like kind of gross. I was like, oh man, I hope I never acted like that when I was their age. And I don't think I ever did. It was definitely, if I did remotely act like that, it was more like comments under my breath or something like that. But these kids were just obnoxious. So
Yeah.
yeah, just curious. Just
Yeah.
curious.
I do know somebody, a very close friend, that used to notoriously hit on bartenders. Like really try by the end of the night because I mean, obviously she's into me. Like
Yeah.
I know somebody who's gotten more fake numbers from bartenders than I think he would even admit. I think it's hilarious because not the most outgoing person when it comes to approaching women. Not that guy. Not the guy that's just firing in all directions. The direction he decided to fire in more often than not was the young lady that was bringing him beverages. And yeah, it used to be an ongoing joke of up, the bartender's kind of pretty. It's on. He's gonna.
Yeah.
When are you gonna ask for a number, dude? Is it time yet? Is it time for the bartender to reject you yet? Um, but yeah, that wasn't. I never played that role, and in those situations, like a Hooters, a Twin Peaks, any of those restaurants that are meant for meant for that great 80s feel of chauvinistic exhibition. Yeah, no.
Well, I think it leads us to our last question. Mark, for the movie Waiting, can you do this all day?
While I have not watched this movie in a while, I was excited to watch it. It was nostalgic as hell for me to just revisit the just shenanigans of this film and the emotions. So yeah, I can still do this movie all day. Though there's parts of it that have aged poorly, nostalgia never dies. You were concerned about doing this movie at some points. And earlier in the podcast, you said, which way should we go? So I have to ask you, are you offended by this content? Or do you as well get the warm and fuzzies? And can you do this movie all day?
So I've watched this movie multiple times in the past, so the rewatchability is there. The music, which we didn't really talk about a whole lot, there was a couple of good songs in there. Goldfinger was in there. I was a big fan of Goldfinger back in the day. Still am. But overall, the music was, it was very indie rock that type of setting, early 2000s, late 90s, where it's like, oh yeah, this is like watching Mallrats, right? Um, the cast and the humor is there, right? I do have a potential concern about the use of the language and what any new viewer will pick up this movie and how they watch it. I have a pretty good feeling that they won't like it. And so that kind of is something that factors into my ranking, because if people pick up a movie that I say that I can do it all day, if they're like, oh my god, I can't believe you like this piece of garbage, like this is so misogynistic, sexist, uh inappropriate, etc., right? There's concern, right? Because I don't want people to feel uncomfortable while watching a movie. I want them to take the movie for what it was, as entertainment, or at least thought provoking. But I wouldn't necessarily say this is thought provoking. I think you would agree with me, right? Certainly, you could take that critical analysis and just be like, well, actually, but and I kind of alluded to it earlier, but I don't think this is that type of movie. Really, it is a hour and a half long premise of how annoying are these people, or what are their malfunctions, right? That's exactly what it is at the end of it. But so the rewatchability there, the humor's there. There's no action, so that kind of knocks it down a few points for me, just because of my love for action. But there's a lot of things that are wrong with this movie, really, really wrong. And if saying that I can do this movie all day is wrong, I don't want to be right, because I love this fucking movie. It's so goddamn entertaining, all day, all night, every day.
You had me at hello. You had me at hello. And now sidebar question, because you mentioned it. If you could pick any two characters from this movie to fight in an action scene that has no bearing on the plot and is just random, who would it be? And how would they fight?
Radimus and Dane Cook's character, for sure. For sure.
What kind of fight is it?
It's going to be more of like the slapstick kind of fight, but I'm talking about
towel whipping
salads being thrown. It's like, oh, I'm not supposed to get ranch in my eyes. You know, that type of like stupid ass humor, to where it's like, you know, they get into it, but it's like the worst type of fight. So I think those two, with their
they bring in the bishop to talk to him after, so then they become friends again. That scene fits. I think we need to
put it better.
Get him back. Deleted scene. Re-release.
Oh,
this movie came out in 2005. In 2 years, it'll be the 20-year anniversary. Let's add a scene.
Why not? Directors, there's such thing as like a director's cut 20 years down the road.
Somebody right? Get me Rob McKittrick.
Never heard of him. I don't know if he did any movies since then, but hey, whatever.
He did Tag, which was pretty entertaining.
Oh, that was a good movie. I did like that.
Yeah.
But
after that, right, well, you know, but yeah.
Anything else?
Does there need to be anything else?
Okay.
Check, please.
All right. Well, that has been another episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I want to give a shout out to Corey Westgate, who gave us some really cool feedback on our previous episode of Blue Beetle. So thank you for tuning in. Thanks for giving the feedback. We hope you come back and listen to us more. And I will even say thank you to all those who were so negative on the comments on TikTok and YouTube about the Blue Beetle episode and our little tasty morsel of things. We just don't like DC, okay? All the characters suck. We just don't like them. Every single one of them. And the only characters that are really great in DC are Spider-Man and Green Predator. So that's it. But until next time, I'm Dan, the part-time Avenger. That's Mark, the Resident Jedi.
Like, subscribe, but I ask one thing. If I get one more damn picture of a Batwing, I'm quitting. I just can't do it. Stop sending me those pictures, Dan.
And for that reason, I'm out.